Chapter 171. Maybe I've found my true calling, thought Alden. He was sitting in the cafeteria at the table he'd helped clear dishes from. His tablet was in front of him, and he was adding Bobby's name to the list of people who wanted to donate food. Event planning isn't that hard. Because he had told Kabir he would take care of informing the generals, he'd sent a message to Drusilla earlier, asking her if it was alright to offer Ashurti and Linda food gifted by humans who weren't the official Matadero chef. Alden couldn't bring himself to call Ashurti personally about it. Are you too important to be in the presence of food made by people without a culinary degree? Was a bizarre distraction of a question, so. Viteri. Not an assassin. One trip to a rapport sure could reframe a lot of things. He'd also updated the Viteri on his planned movements to and from Matadero today, since the last he'd heard she was still monitoring him when he left. Drusilla, with her typical brevity, had thanked him and told him that the dishes presented at the day's second meal were not something the knights considered at length. Maybe they'll consider these at length in a good way, though. It looks like it could be a great meal. He sent a text to Hoyu, telling him to expect his personal trainer to show up at the dorm bearing a cucumber salad. Alden had been sending most of the Apex residents there to drop off their donations. The hardest part of each phone call was the beginning, when he covered why and how he'd ended up at Matadero planning a Thanksgiving dinner. But he'd mastered it now. The trick was to say, it's not really Matadero, only the cafeteria at Matadero. And everyone seemed willing to let it slide even if they were still confused. People are so helpful, he said, admiring some of the first entries on the list. Natalie, magic turkey. Jangdamir's, stuffed peppers. Molly, blackberry cobbler. Gustavo, feijoada. Gretchen, shortbread bars. And Kabir had just scored them a small flock of Peking ducks from a friend's restaurant. The entree table will look good with those in a circle around the turkey, said Alden. Kabir nodded absently. He was muttering and counting on his fingers. I think we have plenty now. It's a good mix of main courses and sweets, he said when he finished. For pickups, I've told people enough to take their dishes to the TC for the batch teleport that's scheduled for 7:45 p.m., Alden said promptly. I'll be picking up the Apex food and the turkey around then, too. After I've eaten dinner with my friends. I'll be back here with it all in time. Just a second, someone's calling. He looked at the name. Jeffy? What does he want? Hey, Jeffy, he said as soon as the Aqua Brutes image appeared, floating in front of his eyes. What's? Do Ortonans like jalapeno or maple smoke better? Jeffy was standing in the Apex Right shop, beside one of the impulse item bins, holding up 2 bags of beef jerky. Huh? Alden stared at him. I guess you heard about the thing I'm doing somehow. We're good on food, though, and jerky isn't. Hey. Jeffy dove toward the jerky display, and it shook violently. Oops. But look. They have turkey jerky, too. He waved another bag eagerly at Alden. Alden hadn't called everyone he knew to request food. He had focused on adults and the classmates he got along with who had avowed parents. Mature people with access to full kitchens had been the goal, and since enough of them had said yes, he hadn't had to resort to asking all of his peers for help. How did the news filter to Jeffy already? He wondered. No reason to reject him when he looked so excited, though. Alden could just leave the jerky in the kitchen instead of putting it on the feast table. Some wizard looking for snacks might find it later and appreciate it. Okay. Just don't get too much, he said. You need to put like 12 of those packs you just grabbed back. And you can take the rest to Hoyu at the dorm. I'm asking him to collect the food in one spot, so that I don't have to fly all over the island. I could run all over the island and get stuff for you, said Jeffy. You still aren't licensed to run on the highways. No, that's not necessary. The plan is set. Just take your jerky to Hoyu, and I'll go get it myself. Thanks. Jeffy nodded. I'll see you there. I need to ask you about talent selection. Your own talent selection? Alden asked. You haven't done it yet? He hadn't realized that. He'd assumed Jeffy had accepted something that looked fun as soon as the system offered. The teachers all told me to wait until they'd advised me, but now I've let them advise me. And I don't think they really get me, you know? So I'm asking everyone else. It's important that you like what you choose, Alden said. We can talk about it. Maybe not today, but soon. It's cool that you're the Thanksgiving man for Matadero now, said Jeffy. A woman wheeling bags of something called instant steel on one of the shop's heavy mover carts turned to stare at him. Let's not mention the cube loud enough for the entire island to hear, Alden said. Sorry, Jeffy whispered. Is it a surprise party? When Alden had finished with him, he refocused on Kabir, who'd stood up from the table but failed to make it more than 2 steps before he received another call of his own. With the dry ice it should be fine, he was saying. All right. Thanks. We'll take care of it when it reaches us. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. He scratched the back of his neck and turned to Alden. That was an ice cream parlor in Rosa Grove. They're donating, too. We don't need it, but I couldn't tell them no. The woman who runs it wanted to thank the generals for saving her parents' apartment. That's awesome. Kabir was still frowning. I should text everyone and let them know we've got enough now. I'm not sure how the ice cream parlor woman found out. She said someone named Larry had just called her. I don't think I know a Larry. That's funny, said Alden. My friend who just called must have heard about it from someone else, too. I wasn't even planning on asking him for anything. Jupiter, don't worry, Alden. The cornucopia will be ready in time. I got permission to skip a class, so I could make it. Alden reread the text. He'd told the system to send all messages directly to his interface, so that he wouldn't miss anything from the people he'd called. Jupiter wasn't one of the people he'd called. What cornucopia? What are they doing? We'd definitely better let everyone know we're through now, he agreed. I didn't tell people to spread the news, but there's obviously been a leak or two. Kabir nodded. Yes. And there's another one. Let me answer it. Hello. We're done accepting. Sushi probably would be refreshing, but we have plenty to feed the wizards Ulria. Yes. Yes, I understand. Someone named Koravam. Greater than he sighed. If I see them I'll tell them you sent it. Yes, take it to the TC. Oh, you already know that. How? No, don't tell your neighbors. We've got plenty. While Kabir tucked the sushi donator down from informing the neighborhood, Alden quickly sent a mass text out to everyone he'd spoken to, telling them that the Matadero potluck was now full. No need to get more people involved. And please let everyone they'd told know the same thing. Jeffy, okay, I got the maple smoke, too. Everly, I'll make sure my parents know. Astrid, my mother is making meatballs. Hoyu, someone just sent a pizza to our room. Astrid, should I tell her to stop? Hoyu, there's not even a name. It just has a pepperoni smiley face on top. Hoyu, I'll call the restaurant and ask who it's from. It's only been an hour since we called the first people, Alden said, trying to mental text answers to everyone who needed them. Everyone must have a lot of pent-up gratitude. Kabir's face was pained. Not all of them. Someone who owns the restaurant next door to one of the ones I called is asking me how many of the Artonans are here to make employment offers and if I could put in a word for him after they eat his burgers. Alden sat up straighter. The burger maker has the wrong attitude. If there's way too much food, the burgers get frozen and eaten months from now when the next demon slaughtered day happens. Shh. Why would you say that? Kabir stared at him in horror. Don't remind me what this place is. Right. Sorry. Liam, Alden, Tina's taking lemon bars to your dorm later. Is Candy Corny there? General Lesherty is snaky sitting right now, Alden texted back. We've definitely got enough now, he said aloud. By the time the stop message gets around it might be slightly ridiculous. But it's fine. The TC stuff will all just arrive downstairs like a normal supply order. There's nothing normal about picking up groceries from a deep, dark basement covered in signs letting you know it could be flooded at a moment's notice. Alden didn't point out that the teleportation room was only deep. It was as well lit as the rest of Matadero, and nothing down on that floor resembled a basement. Hoyu, the pizza center is anonymous. Lexi says anonymous food is too suspicious to feed to wizards. He says I'd better tell you that since your judgment about anonymous food and wizards is off. Hey, Alden said, affronted. My judgment of both is just fine, Lexi. Line of asterisks. When 10 minutes had passed with no more calls or texts from his half of the potluck volunteers, Alden left Kabir arguing with someone who was insisting that the Artonans needed a cheese course. He went to the kitchen to find out if they had the ingredients for the dish he hoped to contribute to this dinner as well as Natalie's. He searched through the fridges and freezers. Corn, peppers, no lima beans. Can't I just use canned beans of some kind? In the storeroom, he stared at the jumbo cans. Some of them were new and familiar, but most of them had black labeling in multiple languages, with no brand names. They were stacked on shelves made of stone that glowed a little when Alden touched them. I hope they didn't can all of this in the 60s and just leave it here. But it sure looks like they might have canned all of this in the 60s and left it here. Maybe I shouldn't bother cooking, after all. Everyone else's dish is going to be better, and I want to take my time and make it exactly right the first time I try it. On the other hand, didn't taking a person's turkey obligate you to add food to their table even more? He checked the time on his interface. Natalie's dinner was starting at 6:30 p.m. and continuing until everyone left. Alden didn't have to show up on the dot. And the recipe was only supposed to take 45 minutes according to his grandmother's note at the top. Connie's cooking from the family cookbook. He didn't know why the thought kept crossing his mind. The angry, lost feeling from a few days ago was gone mostly. I just want to do it, I guess. A little family thing on the family day. Nothing wrong with that. Drusiado was fine with him leaving the cube. Grocery shopping would take a while, but if he flew fast. Oh, I could do that. System, called Dragon Rabbit. A near-instant pickup. Voice only of course. Alden, this is Dragon Rabbit. You need things. I get them for you. The familiar greeting had Alden grinning at a can of probably ancient evaporated milk. Dragon Rabbit. I'm glad you survived all of this stuff. Can you deliver fresh lima beans to the ocean? There was a pause. You want me to throw them in? Line of asterisks. Alden and the nine-edged son whose own mother forsakes him arrived at the delivery point a few minutes ahead of schedule. He decided to use his time wisely, by lying on his back in the sun, watching videos of guys using slings. He needed some offensive options for duels, and Luna Plim had mentioned slings. They were probably more practical than Alden's desire to put something enormous on the end of his string and then smash it around like a hammer. I'll try that too, though. And probably dislocate my arms. The man on the current video, a hobbyist who studied historical weaponry, launched a small rock toward a milk jug and missed for the 15th time. It was obviously hard to aim, and it became even harder to aim when your sling was longer. But Alden wouldn't actually have to deal with that problem to the same degree. Especially if he was imagining his projectile and his sling rope as a single object. I should be able to spin it then preserve it in a couple of different ways. Even before the start of a fight. Then, I launch the rock or temper sphere when the attacker is close, and I'm sure I won't miss. Practice would be necessary, and he was sure there would be some wrinkles. But he should at least be able to learn from it. More importantly, if he practiced offense instead of defense versus heavy hitters like Marcia, he wouldn't exhaust his skill even if he lost the battle. He'd be able to keep going for the next one. I'll start trying it out on people I can't possibly defend against, he decided. I still think my plan yesterday might have worked on Reinhard, though. Dragon Rabbit's delivery drone arrived right on time. It was a large green one with a crown of propellers overhead and fangs painted on its bulbous nose. Alden stood up to greet it and gave it plenty of room to drop the soft-sided cooler bag it was carrying. But it kept circling overhead, propellers buzzing, apparently bewildered by the nonagon. Right here, dude, said Alden, pointing at the nonagon's surface. No, not like that. Don't go under me. He spun the driving ring on his finger and flew a few feet higher. Come here. Put the delivery on this. On top of this. The drone flew up again and hovered. Its lights flashed. Please clear the deck of your ship for delivery. It had a voice that Alden thought was supposed to be sultry. Of all the choices, the deck is clear. To get it any clearer, I'd have to jump off. He thought he was lucky not to have a brand new case of thalassophobia after what had happened. But he still didn't feel like going for a cold swim. Please clear the deck. I want to deliver your parcel, the drone said. If someone were here to entrust me with you, I'd. System, called Dragon Rabbit again. Another instant pickup. Is something wrong with your vegetables? They are being held captive by a drone with a weird voice. I can fix that. A minute later, the drone had been remote piloted into position. It lowered the cooler onto the nonagon across from Alden, along with a surprise t-shirt in a plastic bag. As it flew away, Alden examined his repeat customer reward. The bunny-eared dragon lounging on its mount of luxury goods was cute as far as advertising went, but he couldn't help wondering how much mental effort Stuart would expend trying to interpret the shirt if he ever saw Alden wearing it. He opened the cooler and found the lima beans, with ice packs, plus the specific variety of onions his grandmother had recommended in a smoked spice blend that was supposed to be a good substitute for the bacon flavor. He smiled. I get to eat something my mom probably ate, with almost all the right stuff in it. He was still feeling pleased with how well his day was going by the time he made it back to the kitchen. Kabir was absent, but the radio station the chef liked was turned up again, and he dug out white tablecloths from somewhere. Matadero really does have almost everything if you look hard enough. Couldn't expect people to fight and then eat at a naked table. Alden found an appropriately sized pot, figured out the stove, and congratulated himself on starting the water boiling process without any mishaps. He read the recipe again. Measure everything in advance, he decided. No mistakes. He was looking through drawers and in cabinets, trying to find the measuring spoons, when Kabir returned, carrying an impressive tower of coolers and boxes. One giant takeout bag started to slide as he came into the kitchen, and Alden jumped toward him to grab it. What's all this? He asked. It wasn't time for the TC to send over a delivery yet. Once Alden set down the bag and grabbed a box full of aluminum pans covered in foil from the next level of the tower, Kabir's face was revealed. He looked worried. Slowly, he said, we may have misjudged some things. What do you mean? The TC called, said Kabir. They wanted to know if it was all right to send the food that had already arrived, since they were worried about the staff at the teleshipping area getting overwhelmed with packages. Must be a busy day, said Alden. Kabir grimaced at him. I think they were saying that we are the busy day. Come on. We can't be contributing that much to their load. Even if they're having to run it all through extra security checks or... Are these candles? He stared at the next box. The top was taped, but the label said it contained special occasion candles, autumn evening picnic set, Mad Birate Wax Studio. You got decorations, too? He asked. I didn't, said Kabir. Then these are. I didn't ask for most of the things downstairs. There are buckets full of pickles. Who needs that many pickles? We aren't starting a deli. And people keep calling me to ask if I'll be sure to put their restaurant's name on the food. But you called everyone and told them we were good, Alden said. Did they not pass that on? I haven't gotten any messages from my friends, so I don't think it's still leaking on my end. Surely if teenagers could chill out and control their urge to gossip, then adults should be able to. He looked at the lima beans waiting to go into their pot and the onions sitting beside the cutting board. I'll come help you clear the teleportation room. He grabbed a couple of the tablecloths. I can haul a lot of stuff at once if we put it in these. And maybe you can call all of these places and tell them to cease and desist? It's gone too far, Kabir said. Instead of panicking, he now sounded gloomy. There's nothing we can do but accept our fates. I think you're being a little. Never mind. We've got this. It's going to be fun. He clapped the chef on the shoulder. Let's go collect some Thanksgiving. Line of asterisks. We don't got this, Alden thought a few minutes later, blinking in mute fascination at the room full of donations. We don't got this. Too much Thanksgiving. Abort. The Matadero teleportation chamber smelled like 20 kinds of takeout, and it looked like a post office had crashed into a food court. He waded through it all, trying to beat down the growing, nervous worry that he might have screwed up somehow. I mean, it's food. His eyes landed on a stack of plates that looked like they might be hand-painted. It's mostly food. Food can always be eaten later. Are those French fries? That bag says French fry truck. French fries are a gross leftover. Why would anyone? No. No, it's fine. All we have to do is take all of this upstairs and sort it. And you need to make sure it stops coming. And I will call my friends and make sure nothing weird is going on over there. We can handle 20 gallons of pickles. I have been mistaken for a pickle expert in the past. Long story. Let's do this. He spun around to give Kabir a high five of solidarity. He ended up standing there with his hand lifted awkwardly. Kabir was staring at a bag of croissants. Let's do this. Alden said again. We've got ours still. Teamwork. He started making a clear spot on the floor to spread out his tablecloths. No problem. No sweat. Gratitude is great, and the fish can have the French fries. The wizards are going to be really surprised when they see everything, he said. What if they're surprised in a bad way? They are going to be really surprised in a good way. Arguing with my own inner voice is healthy. Don't you think you're overloading the tablecloth? Kabir asked, finally pulling himself away from contemplating the bakery bag. I don't know if shoving everything into a tablecloth sack will actually make it easier. Trust me. Carrying things is my thing. I can empty this room in 2 trips if I stack things right and put my mind to it. 4 trips later, he was crammed into the elevator with the last of it. Kabir had been left upstairs to unpackage and sort. Alden had a giant tablecloth sack gripped in both hands in front of him. A few things were probably getting more jostled than the creators had hoped they would be, and he was getting more of a workout than he'd expected since he'd been moving everything onto the tablecloth as fast as possible. But this was all fine. He smelled like seafood after accidentally spilling some kind of broth on himself, but that was fine, too. He called Hoyu, trusting that the system would do its job and block out the background if the elevator buttons were earth-ending intel. I hate to say this, said Hoyu when he answered, but I kind of love having so many video lectures instead of regular classes this week. It feels like we're on a vacation from school, doesn't it? And someone just brought an entire case of mooncakes to our room. They're good. They're really good. I'm putting them in the dessert pile. The relaxed tone and the sight of Hoyu standing beside his bromeliad and casually biting into a half-eaten pastry was a balm to Alden's mood. Everything's normal there, then. Nothing's wrong? Hoyu swallowed. This is my first time collecting food for a wizard Thanksgiving, but other than that, it's all normal. The strangest thing going on is probably Jupiter's cornucopia. I went over to the girls' dorm to see it, and it's too large. But everything else is okay. We've got a couple of unexpected dishes so far, but I figure that's fine as long as they taste good. If I get full, I'll ask my dad to help me taste test when he gets here. You're tasting all of it? Alden asked. Of course. My dad thinks what you're doing is fun. He says Matadero needs an injection of fun. And he bets nobody has found where he hid the rice bomb. Whatever that means. But then he said that if we served super food, maybe the wizards would let Nzidor get submerged next time. And I know he was joking, but I started thinking about you getting in trouble for serving super food. So I'm tasting it for the good of the nation. And so that nothing bad happens to you. Thank you. I've got your back. I'm relieved things are going smoothly over there, Alden said. You wouldn't believe how overboard the restaurants are. They're all telling each other. I'm worried we're going to have to trash some of it. Our Tonans can eat a lot, but they're not bottomless. Okay. Call if anything changes. Bye. Hoyu's mouthful of mooncake muffled his own goodbye. No. Greater than Kabir was saying when Alden stepped out of the elevator. No more. I don't care if it's not fair. This is not a chance to show the triplanets what you can do with your spell impression and a pie crust. It's for thankfulness, and we have plenty. Greater than. Alden knew it wasn't the most admirable reaction, but he was so much more relaxed now that he had final confirmation that his helpers probably hadn't contributed to the gossip chain that was responsible for the overabundance of food. In the light of his own innocence, Kabir's renewed irritation seemed like an overreaction. "Kabir, it's fine," he said in a placid voice. "A few extra loads of food to carry upstairs is nothing in the grand scheme of things. It will all work out." Kabir shot him a look. Alden carried his tablecloth sack to the sorting corner they'd established and started cutting through tape and opening carry-out containers. "Work fast, finish Grandma's Sakatash, go to Natalie's." The music was upbeat. It was keeping him going at a good pace, and when one of the songs ended and the voice of the announcer came on for the happy thought of the hour thing they were doing throughout the broadcast to keep everybody's spirits up, Alden was looking forward to hearing it. Happy thought of the hour. For those of you celebrating Thanksgiving with your family and friends tonight, you won't be alone. A young man who had a difficult welcome to About Life earlier this year is not only thriving at one of our Apex schools now, he's also organized a group of his new friends to bring some holiday joy to our Artonan visitors. Greater than. Alden was bent double, reaching for an ugly organic lump that had rolled out of one of the packages. He thought it might be a truffle. I've never held a truffle before. I wonder what that tastes. What? What did the radio lady just say? It was something terrible. He knew it because his whole body had clenched as his subconscious processed the words. Alden Thorne, a rabbit attending school at Chelena, greater than. No. Ha ha. I'm not sure how a 16-year-old ended up at Matadero, but there's a rumor that General Escherty, greater than. Stop saying my name. Why are you saying my name on the radio? With his name. About this? Rabbit teenager organizing a feast for exhausted wizards returning to Matadero tonight is a very happy thought. According to one of his friends, greater than. Whoever it was, you're unfriended. It took him about 3 minutes to find the culprit. Because the culprit was live-streaming about Alden and the Thanksgiving dinner. Line of asterisks. Dern Mary Davis, named for her great-grandma Marian Durnafor, the wizard who her parents admired for founding the passenger pigeon de-extinction program, was sitting at her desk eating a candy bar. The limited edition box set had come and featured Carousel, New York's homegrown hero, looking dazzling in his winter 2040 costume. Dern Mary's social studies homework lay untouched on the desk beside her while she stared at the handsome boy on her phone. Sun-kissed hair, a slightly mischievous smile, and he did the win-win wink exactly 3 times per live Q&A session. To let everyone know which questions were his favorites. Some of your fans are switching over to Finley, win-win, she thought. You must be so sad, but you just keep smiling for us. She was going to type that into the Heel Feather Club for him later. If a comment got more than 1,000 upvotes, Winston would autograph a photo for you. Dern Mary had a soft spot for ranks, so she'd keep boosting Winston's spirits as he inevitably faded into obscurity compared to the obvious superstars of the new classes at the Big 3 hero programs. Some people focused all their affections on his single About, but Dern Mary thought the best part about being kind of maybe a little bit famous herself in the superteen fandom world was following all of the new kids together. The friendships, the scandals. They were the same age as the people she went to school with, but they were hotter, richer, and powerful, with the shadow of unknown futures hovering over them. Any one of them could be a star in the making. Or they could die. Or disappear. Sometimes, you could even see love blossoming for them. The cool breeze on Constantine's face, she thought. It was always there when he needed it most. When he was walking back to his lonely room in Garden Hall after a hard day in the gym, one where he'd struggled to match the other S's in combat and suffered another string of humiliating defeats, that breeze came to him. Just when he was wondering if he should give up and return to the solace of ballet, As his jealous brother Alexei kept commanding him to do, he felt it again, so soft, so silky. The wind brushed over the hair on the back of his neck. Almost like a kiss. "Thank you, gentle breeze," Constantine thought, sighing woefully. "You're the only one who cares about the most useless S-rank." In the dark shadow of the Magiffi's building, Vandy watched over him with her hands coaxing the wind to caress him, her beautiful eyes full of a hopeless yearning. Mary slapped the desk. "Yes. That's going up tonight. It's the next chapter in Hearts. It's practically a prophecy." Vandy and Constantine were perfect for each other. Everly could have that new fire adjuster at Hygiene. "So naturally I volunteered to help him out," Winston's voice said. Mary shook herself free of the ideal romance she was planning for Con, who should always go by his full name Stanton. She looked back at the phone. "Duper supers, chat's going nuts. What did you do, Win-Win?" "Of course the whole class is contributing, but it's an American holiday, so I can take a leadership role if they decide they need me to. I'll be making hot dogs. Like a cooking show with all of you watching. Make some suggestions. What should I top them with? What kinds of condiments do Ortonans like? Hit me with your answers and grilling tips in the comments." "Holy duper supers," Mary breathed as she read back over the chat history so fast her thumb was getting sore from the rapid scroll. "We have confirmation that Reddish Bunny is at the Cube. My God. Oh my God. I thought it was just a stupid rumor. He could be the first B-rank there ever. He probably is. This is proof that that's something. He must be friends with a wizard, or maybe she couldn't think straight. Alden Thorne. The most mysterious teenager on Anzidora. Maybe on the whole planet. People who said he wasn't that interesting compared to real heroes needed to stuff some non-limited edition frosted Bruteos in their mouth and chew so nobody else had to hear them speak. He was silent on social media even if you tried to tell him your parents were into pigeons, too. He had such a tragedy of a life. He had been spotted flying around on a green thing that belonged to one of the powerful anti-demon military wizards. But all the curiosity about why he was doing that had dried up after the Maricel Alcantara bombshell. That girl had shot up the popularity rankings fast. But now Alden was definitely at Matadero. For sure? And he was doing something there. More info needed. Win-Win, Healerman, Sir Wincelot, Mary typed. 3 heart emojis. 1 prayer hands. "You are my favorite, avowed. But what is that Alden guy doing at Matadero? Is it safe? Is he breaking the law?" Win-Win was adorably uncomfortable about discussing people in his class who might be more popular than him. Most of his fans didn't notice, but Mary had a gift for detecting his little facial twitches. Or maybe she'd just realized that he was more likely to answer questions about his classmates if the person asking the question said something negative about them. Winston Feather looked at the camera. He put down the pack of hot dogs he'd been displaying. He was sitting in his dorm room, in front of the bulletin board with all his non-digital fan mail pinned to it. His roommates didn't let him film in the rest of the apartment. "We've got a question from Feather's favorite tonight that I feel like I have to answer. You guys know I always run, but never from the truth." He winked at the camera. Mary winked back at him. "I'm positive Alden isn't doing anything illegal," said Winston. "How could a rabbit break into Matadero when even a deadly organization like Sal couldn't? No, he's just really, really close to the Artonans. He lived with them for months during that thing on the moon. Some people in our class are even saying the system rescued him from the span before them. Oh my gosh, by the way, you guys have to remember to visit the socials of all my classmates who suffered through that. Tell them how glad you are that they're okay. It was really terrifying for them. But yeah, Alden got saved from the span first. Even though his combat potential, well, he's the best B rank in our class." Winston laughed. "So it's natural for him to be close to the wizards and want to thank them for protecting him and cleaning up Anzidora. Some of us are even thinking that with that green octagon he's flying around, he's probably on his way toward a dream job for a rabbit." There are rumors that he's really hoping that General Escherty will offer him a permanent position if he does a good job as an assistant and Octagon driver. Winston smiled. It's only a rumor, but good for Alden. A job like that would probably pay better than superhero work. If it ends up taking him away from the program so soon after we've met, I know we'll all be sad, but we'll also be happy he found the career that makes his heart race like a speedster. So, when I heard he wanted to host a big Thanksgiving for the Wizards and he was worried there wouldn't be enough food, I was so glad to help him out with it. We're going to make this a great party together. The next 20 minutes were some of the best television Dernt Mary Davis had ever seen. Winston kept dropping hints about how close Alden Thorne was to General Escherty, and it started to sound more and more like his position as the General's personal rabbit errant person was a done deal. Meanwhile, the Super Tomorrow group that talked about all the young avowed was blowing up, almost as big as it had on the day Maricel's involvement in trying to stop the Sal terrorists had gone public. Is Reddish Bunny leaving us? No. It's too soon. This group only just named him Reddish Bunny. Is General Escherty the reason Reddish Bunny got lost in the first place? Or did they become best friends on that Thagund asteroid? Stop everything. Guys, did Reddish Bunny help Maricel defeat the Sal people? Maybe she's going to be at Pompsign Matador Thanksgiving. Alden has no family. Remember that. Maybe he met General Eshesh on Munthagund and became like a son to him. I wish Anartonin would adopt me, too. Winston was so busy talking it took him forever to get his hot dogs downstairs to the grill outside Garden Hall. But Dernt Mary stuck with him every step of the way. She watched as Jeffy, S-rank Aqua Brute, definitely going places, came over to say hello. You're not doing the charcoal right, Winston. I think I know how to grill, Winston said, massaging one of the briquettes with a flame on the end of his lighter. The brute shook his head. My grandpa grills all the time. He doesn't just light the coals while they're spread out flat. You need to go get the chimney from the community kitchen. That sounds pretty logical, thought Dernt Mary. Jeffy almost walked into one of the filming drones. He didn't seem to realize he was part of a cooking show. Like I was saying, Winston said loudly. Today we're making hot dogs because Alden asked for my help. And I'm always here for my friends. These are for the Thanksgiving potluck at Matadero. Jeffy said excitedly. I made beef jerky. He looked at the camera. I made beef jerky. Actually I just bought it, but I mixed it up so every wizard gets a bite of smoky Maplipino turkey jerky instead of only one flavor. So he does know he's being watched. Alden realized that the wizards weren't going to have a Thanksgiving, so he's planning it for them, said Jeffy. It's a special Anisidrum Thanksgiving with food from lots of countries. He's a nice guy. He gave me his shirt when mine broke once. Winston grabbed the tongues before Jeffy could. I was just telling my fans how Alden is probably going to be making a lot of money working for General Escherty as his rabbit assistant. He keeps saying assistant and rabbit like he's driving a point home, thought Dernt Mary. Careful, Win-Win. You're being more heavy-handed than usual. That's why he's at Matadero, Winston said. I thought he was there because he got hurt and the healer wanted him to stay, said Jeffy. Dernt Mary's face was so close to her phone she was fogging the screen. That's what he told us, Jeffy said. These are American beef hot dogs, Winston said. Arf dogs. My favorite brand. He came to school in a cast and everything, said Jeffy. It was a magic cast. Arf dogs, said Winston. I'd love to talk to the people who make them about a collab because they are delici, eep. A green blur dropped out of the sky so fast that Jupiter, who was collecting peppers from a nearby plant, dropped several. Winston, apparently under the impression that an aerial attack was taking place, ran away so fast he completely vanished from view. Hi, Alden. Jeffy said brightly. Are you here to pick up my jerky? Chapter 172. Alden's head throbbed. His ears roared. Fury and flight speed were equally likely culprits. He jumped off the nonagon, taking in the situation as well as he could in this mood. Jeffy, cheerful beside the grill. Jupiter, floating peppers and looking intrigued. Drones, hovering, 2 of them filming, 1 doing something else. Maybe it performs some amazing spell that makes Winston seem like a likable human being to his fans. A few people were going in and out of the entrance to the girls' building, which was almost hidden from this spot here in the cookout area at the back of the garden. And Winston was all the way over there with them. On his own interface, Alden could see himself in profile, standing a couple of steps away from Jeffy and the grill. He'd been watching Winston's hideous, whatever the hell it was, on the way over here. He might have screamed at the speedster a few times. Hard to remember clearly. He had definitely texted and been ignored. Now, his fists were clenched. He wanted to scream some more. This was worse than when Hazel had forced his peace of mind debt to land. He was angry, embarrassed, sorry he hadn't foreseen this somehow and headed it off. "Are you here to pick up the food?" Jeffy asked again. Alden pulled his eyes away from Winston. He left the drones behind. "It's enough." "No, Jeffy." Alden stared at the main camera. "Since Winston refused to answer my messages, I flew all the way here to say that he was not correct about us needing more help for the Thanksgiving meal. If you run in Zedora and thinking of donating, thank you so much. But we have plenty of food and decorations lined up. Maybe consider having dinner with your friends tonight instead." I also wanted to ask Winston why he would do something like this. An artful revenge would probably have included a wounded look or an astonished tone. Something to tug on the heartstrings of the people watching. But Alden was too pissed off to even try it. What he really wanted to do was shove the whole pack of ARF dogs down Winston's throat, plastic wrapper and all, while screaming, "Shut up! Shut up, you selfish piece of shit." So he looked irritated, and he sounded stressed. Maybe he was going to come across as a bad person. But he was talking now, and there probably wasn't much time left before Winston realized he ought to shut off the cameras. "Winston knows I don't want to have much of a media presence right now. Focusing so much on me during this Q&A session, when I told him just a few days ago that I wasn't ready to talk about myself online yet is. Yeah. But I guess he's still mad about me beating him and gee." The stream ended abruptly. Winston was suddenly there, yanking the little round camera drone out of the air and away from Alden. "Don't talk to my fans," he said, in a tone of shock he had no right to. "I didn't give you perm. You're over here now? Good." Alden stepped toward him. "I have a question for you. You can't just say whatever you like to another person's follow. Are you the most important man on Earth?" Alden asked. "That's my question." Winston gaped at him. "You," said Alden, staring him down. "You. Are you, Winston Reginald E. L. Feather, the most important man on Earth? Is that how you think of yourself? Like, if you wake up tomorrow and the internet has disappeared and nobody can ever again see your win-win whatever it is you do for hours every day with your obnoxious drones, will the planet we live on stop spinning? You're acting like a psycho." Winston shouted. "Yes or no?" "No." Alden took another step closer to him. "Then why the fuck are you making up stories about Tyon Escherty? He's busy cleaning up the ocean so that it doesn't swallow the island we're standing on, and you're acting like he's a toy you can play pretend with. In your twisted little brain, are your ARF dogs and the feud you've obviously decided the two of us are having really so serious that lying about someone the system calls general seemed like a good idea to you?" Winston looked worried for a few seconds. Before Alden could derive any satisfaction from it, though, the worry was replaced by a scoff. "I wasn't lying. I was just sharing rumors. I said probably and maybe a lot. It's not like that's illegal. So I didn't do anything wrong. Just sharing rumors," Alden said flatly. "There's a specific rumor about Tyon Escherty accepting my lengthy pleas to take me on as his octagon waxer. There's a rumor about me moving into his house on the True Planets for literal years so that I don't have time to finish school here with the rest of you. You heard those rumors somewhere? I think Alden's mad at you, Winston." Winston and Alden both ignored Jeffy's interjection. Winston straightened. "How do you know if I heard them or not? People say all kinds of things about you." "Fine. Where did you hear those particular things?" Winston Feather rolled his eyes. "You childish bastard." Alden unclenched his jaw with difficulty. "Well, those rumors are wrong," he bit out. "Now you know. So go snuggle up to that camera and apologize to Tyon Escherty for letting unverified garbage fall out of your mouth over and over again. I counted you saying his name 18 times on my way here from Matadero, and I was flying fast. You don't get to say what I talk about on my own channel. You're not my boss or my mo. No need to apologize to me." Alden raised his voice. "Just him. You should probably apologize to your fans and the company that makes those hot dogs, too, but that's up to you. I'm not apologizing. Get your own fans if you want to say something. I know that's your plan anyway. This too cool to care thing you do is so fake. Everyone's sick of it. What are you even talking about? We all know the truth. We can see through you." "You," running footsteps cut Alden off. He turned his head in time to be face to face with Hoyu. "You have to come quick," Hoyu said. "There's a problem with some of the food." He glanced at Winston, then back at Alden. "Sorry if I interrupted, but I do need you." Alden caught his breath, collected his thoughts. "Fuck. I'm just wasting my time with this idiot, aren't I? It's fine. I'm coming." He started to follow Hoyu. "You didn't even beat me," Winston called after him. "A trick isn't the same as winning in fair combat. Ignore him." Hoyu grabbed the sleeve of Alden's shirt like he was afraid Alden wouldn't take the advice. "I wanted him to apologize," said Alden. "No. I wanted him not to be such a jackass in the first place. That might be too much to ask for in his case." The automatic doors slid open. Hoyu glanced over his shoulder to make sure Winston wasn't following them, then hurried over to one of the tables in the common area to grab a casserole dish with an envelope taped to the glass lid. The community kitchen was mostly full of students Alden didn't know, but Mehdi was in the corner arguing with someone on the phone about whether raisins could be substituted for dates. "What's wrong with the food?" Alden asked, taking the stairs up two at a time, trying to put his mind back on the things that had to be dealt with this afternoon. "None of it's actually poisoned, is it?" "I lied a little bit," said Hoyu. "Sorry. The food's fine. I was just worried about you. It's not like I was going to fight him. You were verbally fighting him. And I'm sure he deserved it. I don't know what happened. But if he was extra horrible today, and took a swing at you..." Alden sighed. As they approached their apartment, he saw that the door was open a crack. "Did you run out so fast you forgot to close it?" Hoyu frowned. "No. I was already downstairs when you got here. Khan knocked and told me he talked to a lady who wanted to deliver this." He lifted the casserole dish. "I don't know why he couldn't have just brought it up himself instead of telling her to leave it on the table down there." When Alden pushed the door open, the sight that greeted him took his mind off Winston at least. The counter and the table were covered in food, like he'd expected. Less expected was Khan, lying on the fuzzy rug in front of the fireplace, wearing pink sunglasses, and moving his arms and legs like he was trying to make a snow angel. Hoyu gasped in outrage and rushed past Alden to confront the villain. "Khan, you broke into our apartment?" "I can revert the doorknob's lock as long as it's been opened within my time limit," said Khan, still flapping all four limbs. "When is Lexi coming back from the library? I need him to see me like this." Hoyu set the casserole dish down on the floor, and then dove on top of him. "Oh. Man, I'm not a durabrute. That's right. You're a scoundrel greater than. Give Sonny back his glasses. The polar bear has a name." Hoyu liberated the sunglasses from Khan's laughing face. "You get his feet, Alden. We'll throw him down the stairs." "Alden wouldn't do that to me. He's a good person." "I almost dropped the nanagan on Winston's head," said Alden. "So I wouldn't be too sure about that." "Crap. The nanagan. I left it down there where people could play with it." He ran over to the living room window, shoving a bromeliad leaf out of the way to unlatch it, and leaned out until he could see the grill. Winston was gone. Jeffy seemed to be studying the pack of hot dogs. And the nanagan had an unauthorized passenger already. Jupiter. Alden shouted. "Jupiter, I'm going to move it now. Get off of it." She waved, but she didn't get off. "Does that mean she wants me to move it with her on it or what?" "I'm going to park it on the roof," he clarified. "The roof. She can just climb down if she doesn't like it up there," said Con from behind him. "Have you guys seen that thing she's making for the wizards? She says it represents the oomph." Alden looked around and saw Hoyu walloping Constantine with a sofa pillow, then he turned his attention back to the Nonagon. He directed it up slowly and then toward him. When Jupiter arrived at the window, she was stringing peppers on what looked like a vine that had been stripped of its leaves. She was also wearing sandals and a long flowy skirt with her uniform top, which made for a strange combo. "You need to get off," Alden said. "I'm going to put it on the roof." She was staring at the bromeliad. "Where'd you get that?" "Can I?" "You can't have it," shouted Hoyu. "You kill half the plants you use anyway." Jupiter sighed and got onto her knees. She held the pepper string out toward Alden. He took it so that she could climb through their window. "Hello, beautiful, greater than," she said to the bromeliad as she passed. Then she looked around. "Your room has very handsome furniture. You need to get rid of the people in the room above you, so you can raise the ceiling and have the exposed beam look." "We'll get right on that," said Alden. "The cornucopia's almost finished." She looked at him. "I really wanted to know what Matadero smells like. But it's hard to pick it up because you smell so much like crab, garlic, and truffles. I spilled some kind of seafood broth on me earlier." He had also crushed the life out of a truffle. "That's him?" Khan asked. "I thought it was whatever was in this dish." Hoyu sat down. "You do smell a lot. It's not bad, but it's powerful." "Jupiter, help us throw Khan down the stairs," said Hoyu. She looked at Khan. "But the window's closer." "Jupiter, how could you? We were teammates." "Team Constantly Awesome went through so much together. What are you guys doing?" He seemed very surprised when they actually did stuff him out the window onto the Nonagon. Alden parked him on the roof. When Hoyu shut the door on Jupiter, Alden said, "Thanks for giving me an excuse to get away from Winston. I needed it." "What did he do?" "I'm not sure how it started, since he was already spewing random bullshit when I tuned in. But by the time it ended, he'd made up fictional versions of me in a night and as good as promised his followers that I'd be leaving the program any day now to pursue my higher priority dream of living in Escherty's garage." Hoyu pursed his lips. "He's imploding, then." Earlier this week, he was making digs about Finley running away from the span, but they were subtle. If he's going to implode, why does he have to drag others down with him? Alden bent and picked up the casserole dish. "Him saying stuff that's easily proved wrong will only make him look bad in the long run," Hoyu said. "I know." Alden set the dish on the table, and untaped the envelope from the top. The food under the lid was green. Creamed spinach, he was guessing. When he opened the envelope to see who it was from, he found a short letter addressed to the generals and wizards at Matadero. "We will never be able to thank you enough for helping our children," it said. "Liam, Tina, and Royce are the most important people in the world to us. This is the kind of thing I hoped we'd get for the potluck." He carefully folded the note back up and retaped it to the dish. "I'm not sure what to do now," he said. "My schedule's completely off. I think there's an air traffic monitor who's mad at me. And I still have so much Thanksgiving left." "You should get rid of the crap smell before anything else," said Hoyu. "Really?" Alden sniffed the front of his shirt. His hand smelled so much like truffle that he couldn't detect the crab. "You might be right." On his way back to his bedroom, he noticed that Khan had actually succeeded in making a noticeable carpet angel. Line of asterisks. Line of asterisks. The rest of the afternoon was bonkers. Alden felt like he'd volunteered to juggle a few balls to brighten up a party, only to realize too late that all the guests had taken it as an invitation to throw everything they had at him. He dropped a lot. He got hit in the face a few times. And there was nothing left to do but keep juggling as much as he could. "I'm sorry, but I don't have time to answer questions," he said to a woman who'd just called. She ran some local interest site that Alden had never heard of. He rolled over the back of the sofa, which had been repositioned to block the hallway that led to their bedrooms. Lexi, who was sitting on the sofa with Ruther, looked resigned. Not today. My only statement about the potluck is already up on my Trim account. Yes, I do think, Happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate all the help so much. We have enough food now, covers it. Not that it's working. Bye. Who was that? Hoyu asked, passing a cordless slow cooker, not his own, out the window to Lucille. They were in charge of loading in on a gun. Alden was trying not to look because the sight of the growing pile was adding to his anxiety. Someone from some website the system translated as Star Eyes, said Alden. I don't know. Mr. Zhangdamir, Astrid, and Jerry were at the kitchen table performing final quality checks and making sure everything was labeled and sealed for travel. Alden had some concerns about the amount of tape Hoyu's dad was using. The dishes definitely wouldn't leak, but he thought he and Kabir might need an axe to get them open again. He'd been an awesome help though. Not for the taste testing, but for the intimidation factor. Before he'd shown up, other people living in the dorms who'd gotten wind of the fact that Alden was present had started appearing to ask questions about Matadero and the attack, like he was going to be able to personally answer everything the president of the Anisidran High Council couldn't. Alden had told them he knew nothing more than they did, that he was tattooed to secrecy, and that he was busy. But even when they left, they didn't really leave. For a while, there had been a throng hanging out in the hall outside their door like it was the new, must-be place for anyone who wanted to talk conspiracy theories about the submerger boat and its passengers. A few uni students had even shown up. Hoyu had asked his dad to get rid of them as soon as he'd arrived. Since then, people who entered the apartment had developed the ability to politely drop off their food and leave if they weren't helping out. Most of them anyway. Mr. Zhangdamir only gave off no-nonsense adult vibes to people who hadn't grown up with Hoyu. Whenever conflated by for a few minutes, the level of goofing off skyrocketed. Earlier, Alden had chased Bobby downstairs to thank her for the cucumber salad in person and ask what was up with her training schedule now that everything was out of whack. When he'd gotten back to the room, Kon, Hoyu, and his dad were all making mustaches for themselves out of licorice ropes that had fallen out of a package. What's left to do? He asked himself now. He had to make at least one trip down to F to deliver everything he could to the TC before going to Natalie's fridge, he decided. He opened it. Did someone bring a pitcher of milk? That's not going to happen. A pitcher of milk will be a pain to carry and it's not special, but it's so good. You have to take that. It's not plain milk. The chorus of objections from all the girls was so sudden and so loud that Alden felt like he'd accidentally committed a crime. He turned to see even Lucille leaning back through the window like she was afraid the milk needed to be protected. I'll take it. Don't panic, anybody. Marcia brought that while you were in the bathroom, Lexi reported. He was currently keeping the master list of who had given what. Marcia. It goes with this, Astrid said, running over to join him by the fridge. She pulled out a huge glass jar full of something red and goopy. The blood of Marcia's enemies. It's fresh strawberry syrup with strawberry pieces, Astrid said. The milk is more like melted vanilla ice cream. You mix them. Marcia drinks it for breakfast every day, said Jerry. And she shares. It's our favorite thing about her. Okay. But can we put the melted ice cream in something with a lid? Even if I preserved it on the flight, it would be annoying for anyone else to handle afterwards. And Jerry ran off in search of a container. Alden emptied the fridge into styrofoam coolers. Rahul, the president of the B-list, had come over to check on him after hearing all the buzz around campus. Then he'd left and returned with all the tape, the coolers, adhesive labels, markers, and more useful organizational things before heading to the MPE building for a class. What a hero, thought Alden while he taped the coolers. What an intellectual giant. Imagine stopping by to see what we actually needed instead of just bringing whatever you found in the back of a closet. I hope someday people pay him millions for firing garden gnomes out of his cannons. Someone had delivered folding tables and chairs. So many unnecessary folding tables and chairs. They were all stacked against a wall downstairs, getting in everybody's way. And there was no name on them other than Alden's own, so they looked like his space-hogging tables and chairs now. He kept up a string of texts with Kabir. He packaged food. He shoved food out the window. He managed to keep his clothes clean. He ran what felt like 10 laps around the dorms, suggesting that the people in his class who were still trying to make things should either finish up or give up as kindly as he could. He told them all that there would only be one more food flight leaving the dorms tonight, and it would not be as frighteningly huge as this one. Then he headed to the grill to check on Jeffy. Jeffy had been at the grill for a really long time, receiving occasional deliveries of groceries. Alden assumed the brute had decided he was cooking something better than jerky for the wizards, and he had committed himself to being enthusiastic about it no matter what it looked like because Jeffy had been the only redeeming part of Winston's stream. As he approached the grill, he found Everly Kim watching Jeffy's back with fascination. "I think he might be a genius," she whispered. "I loaned him my camera." That explained why the drone pointed at Jeffy was a white glitter model that looked like a snowball with a lens. "What's he doing?" Alden whispered since she had. Everly typed, and a link appeared. "My grandpa shows us how to grill right, Liv." Alden opened it to see Jeffy tandem streaming with a wiry, middle-aged man who was wrapping an ear of corn in foil with one hand while he sipped on a drink in a rocks glass with the other. "All right, Jeffy," he said. "How are those chicken thighs looking on your end? You ready to cut into one?" Alden blinked. Then he saw the number of viewers and had to blink again. Then he saw the comments, and felt like he'd entered a new dimension. "Sharkpa is the best. I wish I had a Sharkpa. Sharkpa, do you miss Jeffy? I'm crying. My dad never taught me how to grill. Where's Sharp Nana? Has she gotten back from the store with our ARF dogs yet?" "Are these mostly Winston's fans?" Alden asked quietly. Everly nodded. She hadn't taken her eyes off Jeffy. "And some of mine. We're going to grill the ARF dogs together when Sharp Nana gets back. We have to wait so long because the store is very far away, and it's night, and she drives slow. We're all a little worried because once she hit a deer. But we've learned 3 different ways to light charcoal." Alden almost wanted to stay and watch it himself. Line of asterisks. Line of asterisks. At 5:30 p.m., Alden perched on the 9-edged sun outside the TC, having flown in winds so strong and sudden that he almost suspected there was an evil shaper of sky with a grudge against him. The Nonagon itself had been unaffected, but rest in peace to that one bag that had caught a gust, billowed like a sail, and fallen into the Pacific. It had held someone's beautiful homemade bread loaves, and Alden was trying to convince himself that he wasn't a failure for not being able to catch it without risking his life and the rest of the load. Upon arrival, his interface had directed him to aerial vehicle parking. He decided not to obey it. Instead, he headed for the main entrance, intending to fly right toward the teleshipping area the easy way, only to find that the Nonagon wouldn't fit through the doors. It was too wide. "All right, just juggle another ball then. We carry everything through in batches. Hustle." He looked around. The nearest human in sight was too far away to make shouting for assistance anything but rude. Why was there nobody around to entrust you with things when you needed them? Hustle and muscle, then. He loaded his arms with bags, grabbed the largest stack of coolers he could manage, and headed for the door with a lot of styrofoam blocking his view. "Pizza pie isn't Zidora's favorite," said a familiar voice as he passed into the slightly warmer interior of the building. "Pizza pie makes everyone smile. It's the post drop I use to send my letter to the Vilras. They must have it singing advertisements now." As he continued on, a toilet flushed freakishly loudly. They have got to get that plumbing problem fixed. He speed-walked, ignoring the feeling he had that people were probably noticing him and pointing, until someone shouted his name. "Alden. Mr. Alden Thorne." He stopped and shifted to look to the side to find the woman who worked at the customer service desk smiling at him. "You're him, aren't you? The one who planned Matadero Thanksgiving?" "That's me. Do you need any help?" I'm not supposed to leave the desk since I'm the only one here right now, but I could call someone. That would be great. I tried to bring the 9-edged General Escherty's flying vehicle inside with a bunch of packages on it, but it wouldn't quite fit through the doors. We have a larger entrance for things like that. You could drive a bus through sideways if you wanted. Thanks. That would make things a lot faster. I'll drop this off and then go back for the rest. I can also give you an SliceOfLife if you need one today. So she remembers me. I'll grab one before I leave. Where's the guy who's usually here? Is he alright? Normally, Alden wouldn't have asked about the SliceOfLife man's welfare. But given what had happened recently, he's fine, she said. Decided the customer service desk wasn't for him. Definitely for the best, thought Alden. That jerk was a sour welcome to Nzidora. He should have a job in some place where he doesn't have to talk to people. When he reached teleshipping, he tried to pretend that the puddle of cranberry sauce he found on the floor in front of the drop-offs counter had nothing to do with him while he filled the counter with everything he'd brought. Since he'd been shipping his cat last time, he'd accompanied Victor through a whole security process, but he should just be able to leave the food. Where is the person I'll leave it with? As soon as he'd had the thought, that person stepped out of the back. Before his eyes turned to Alden, they fixed on the stack of coolers and the forest of bags. He looked very angry to see them there. Listen, he said, I don't know what restaurant you're from, but this is too much. Teleportation services are a limited Anisidran resource, and even though something stupid is going on at the cube, that doesn't mean you can get away with, so this is where you work now. Alden said, beaming at the SliceOfLife man's familiar scowl. I'm really glad you're safe after everything that's happened. The SliceOfLife man's face went slack. I'm Alden. This is for Matadero. I'm going to go get the rest of it. There's a lot. You. Why is it you? I'll be back later this evening with even more, Alden said. Happy Thanksgiving. Chapter 173. One on-stream bite of a grilled bell pepper to satisfy the fans pestering Jeffy for a glimpse of him. One nodded at Constantine, who was at the bottom of the staircase, scraping mashed potatoes and pieces of a broken bowl together while Soren apologized. One loud groan as he glanced at his social media account and saw all the requests for information about the heartwarming thing the teenager with the heartbreaking story was doing. One piece of origami paper collected from his desk drawer. One shouted conversation out of his bedroom window to the swarm of people who'd gotten involved in cornucopia decorating. He would not be flying that thing to Matadero later unless it shrank by half. They'd been told. One warning to Hoyu and Lexi about the questionable nature of the potatoes that would soon be arriving. One strong handshake from Mr. Jangdemir. And one final flight down to F with a load of supplies for the SliceOfLife man. Even Artonans love PIZZZZZZZZAAA. Maybe. One thought so crazy it would never have crossed his mind on a less ludicrous day. One frowned as he stopped and stared at Post-Drop 1301, a graduation capstone project gifted to F-City by Inda Juliana. He tried to target it with his skill. And he felt the pull of it, that little weighted point in the universe that marked the location of his entruster. His sense of it was oddly fragile, like it existed halfway between reality and a fevered hallucination. But there it was. He pressed his lips together. He watched the post drop until his eyes started to burn from dryness. I am not prepared for this, and I can't think through it right now. But thanks for the pizza. A toilet flushed. Not normal, Alden thought, striding away quickly. Not my business. Not today. He flew fast toward Apex and Boomtown. Line of asterisks. Alden parked the 9-edged sun on the roof of the building where Natalie, Hadiza, and Elijah lived, and tried to tame his hair with one hand while he hurried downstairs. Their dinner party had started 20 minutes ago, and feelings of self-pity were occasionally breaking through the noise in his head. All the magic food will be gone. I bet there was magic food I could have eaten, and I missed it. He hurried down an acrid-smelling hall, not that unusual given the neighborhood, and knocked on their door. A moment later, Natalie opened it for him. Warm air hit him and the stench was blown away by a bouquet of food smells that might have wafted in straight from heaven. Natalie was dressed casually in her pink overalls. Her hair was up in a bun, and she was wearing a pair of tiny earrings shaped like a fork and knife. "You made it. I'm sorry I'm late. And I should only stay for half an hour or so. The chef at Matadero is going to need a hand dealing with all of it." "You're good," she said, shutting the door behind him. "That's enough time to eat and meet everybody." Alden took in the group that made up everybody while he followed her over to the fancy range she had bought with the money she had made doing his meal prep. The apartment was decorated for a party, and teenagers were sitting all over the furniture and floor. But it was quiet except for the sounds of spoons scraping bowls and the music coming from the television that hung on the wall opposite the kitchen. The TV was showing a recording from this morning's Thanksgiving extravaganza in Atlanta. A high school band was playing on top of an air float that looked like a storm cloud, while performers dressed in silver to represent raindrops used the aerial silks hanging from the float's underside. It was a cool show, worth watching even if someone had grown up with more Anzidor-level holiday spectacles in Alden's opinion. But nobody was looking. They were all too busy having sacred experiences with the food in their bowls. "Everyone seems to like the appetizer course," Natalie said proudly. On top of the stove, a large pot held what was left of a velvety golden soup. "It's vegan," she announced. "I know it is." He stuck his face over the pot and took a deeper whiff. "Natalie, it smells like you somehow melted comfort. I know you know that, but I don't mind hearing compliments." She bumped him with her shoulder and reached for the ladle. "I am really glad you came. Elijah was posting threats on your pigeon picture earlier, and she saw your please no more food message go up. So she stopped talking about how you should be forced to live on bread and water and started snooping on you instead. To see what was going on. #Matadero Thanksgiving is trending. There was a video of you flying to F a little while ago. How did I look? We couldn't see you too well. You were hidden by so many supplies. And what about that guy in your program? Elijah found his page. We don't like him. Is he a rabbit hater? Alden glanced over at Elijah, who was sitting with her back to the dishwasher and her eyes closed as she licked the back of a spoon. She had a yellow maple leaf pinned to the front of her green dress. Other artificial leaves, looking abnormally lovely, hung from threads attached to the ceiling. You good there, Elijah? You know spoons aren't edible, don't you? He said. She opened her eyes just wide enough to glare at him. My fury is only temporarily paused. Hadassah and I both hate you now, turkey taker. Greater than. Alden snorted, then looked back at Natalie. As far as I can tell, Winston Hill feathers mad at me for existing in the same school as him, and he'd sell his soul for 15 minutes in the spotlight. He says awful stuff sometimes, but I don't think he's actually got convictions about rabbits, ranks, or anything like that. He just obsesses over how his fame level compares to everyone else he meets. Forget him then. Look at the star of the show before you eat your pumpkin orange soup. She bent down to peer through the oven door and motioned for him to join her. Alden's nose being so close to the vent as he admired the oven's lone occupant was a blessing and a curse. Are you really going to preserve it until the wizards show up at Matadero for dinner? She asked. Of course. This is a Natalie Choir skill debut. I'm not going to let it sit out losing its crispy, juicy glow. Give it to me perfect, and I'll get it to them perfect. Promise. She looked pleased. It's heavy. She's a big girl. Big enough for me to have a wing before she leaves, greater than Elijah muttered. I can handle a turkey, said Alden. I wouldn't mind borrowing a bag or something, but I definitely won't let anything happen to it. Make sure the wizard from Bunker Street has some, said a voice from behind him. He straightened and looked around to acknowledge Hadassah. She was on the other side of the kitchen's island, empty bowl in one hand as she reached up to tap the thread holding one of the leaf decorations. It took on a glimmering quality, like it was catching the light in the room exactly right. Rodin. That guy's name is Whirly Rodin. The tattoo on Alden's chest was gone now except for the concentric triangles. When his arm was down by his side, they weren't noticeable. I'll make sure he gets some. Are you three really all right after what happened to you that night? We're fine, said Natalie. We're the only ones who are fine. Greater than Elijah climbed to her feet and gazed at their guests with a superior expression. Look at them. Weaklings. Greater than. A few people were staring at their dishes like they couldn't believe the soup was gone. One boy in a fedora was watching the girl beside him finish hers off so intently that Alden wouldn't have been surprised to see him reaching over to stick his spoon in her bowl. They aren't trained like me. Their misfortune. Natalie, another bowl. Greater than. No way, said Alden, blocking the pot as she approached. Do you know what kind of day I've had? Let me have firsts before you get seconds. Line of asterisks. The soup tasted like a trip to a pumpkin patch he'd never been to, on a cool fall afternoon he'd never experienced. Natalie was either improving or she'd put more oomph into this one to make up for the lack of the entree she'd planned. By the time Alden licked his bowl clean, the other guests had recovered from the appetizer glow and started grazing on the side dishes and desserts. They were all delicious, but not in the magical way. I guess a room full of people eating in utter silence wouldn't be much of a party. The television was louder now. People were milling around and introducing themselves. Alden recognized a few of the guests as fellow rabbits from intake. The others were an eclectic mixture. It was a group just shy of 30 people, and Alden was the only talent development program student. But he wasn't lonely. Everyone here knew he was stopping by on his way to #Matador Thanksgiving. So you're the one who had a teleporterachi? You're from that video with Laura and her granddaughter. Man, that was, you planned a party for wizards. That's brave. Greater than. You're the Globie who's been inside the cube. And at a time like this. What? Yep, Alden said in between bites of the few vegan offerings. That's me. Please. My time is limited. Just let me eat in peace and pretend this is all I have left to do tonight. Actually, at any other time he would have been interested in this guest list. The people here were different from the students he usually spent his time with as far as interests and ambitions went. Other than the rabbits, he talked to a third-year healer Hadaisa had befriended who was trying to get her first comic book published, a second-year polar brute who was stoked about the fact that he'd gotten approval to travel with a university group in Antarctica next year, and a meister who played a giant drum weapon. Her passion was xenocultural studies, not weapons. She and the brute had met Natalie at a club for people who were extraterrestrial travel and culture enthusiasts. Alden hadn't even been aware there was such a club on campus. They were all looking forward to a video talk that had been scheduled with a Lorch Village for next week. He watched the time he'd allotted himself for a relaxing meal tick away while he stood in the corner by a broom and dustpan, shoveling apple pie into his mouth. A pair of rights, one of them the fedora guy, who lived next door with his parents and brother, had corralled him here to ask questions about the Nonagon. Alden's answers were less knowledgeable than they'd hoped, but they were sticking around to explain their own current projects to him, as if his possession of a magical vehicle made him one of their kind. I'm Lou, said the fedora. And so is she. We're both in our workshops half the time. Lou? Alden asked after swallowing another mouthful of pie. Long-term Earth-based workers, said the girl right. She was short, and the orange stars on her bobblehead band were waving just below Alden's nose. Oh. I hadn't heard it abbreviated like that. You're both doing work with your powers already? They'd said they were finishing up high school classes and starting uni in January. The fedora was a student at CNH, and the bobble band was at Nyadin on the Bayside campus, which was closed at the moment due to water damage. Alden hadn't expected them to have avowed jobs. So far the only high schoolers he'd met who got summoned frequently were rabbits and loot. There have been way more right assignments than usual, said the fedora. I don't mind as long as it doesn't last forever. I make equipment storage cases. Not the most exciting thing, but I do have to customize each one for the object going inside it. A lot of unusual tools and weapons end up in my hands for a little while. And I make automated process panels for drudgery chests, said the girl. Those are amazing, said Natalie. They are amazing. She had somehow gotten away from a group that was trying to persuade her to use her skill while smearing jam on a buttermilk biscuit, for the purpose of creating a super biscuit they could use as a prize for the limbo game they had going on. She helpfully grabbed Alden's paper plate and tossed it toward the trash can. It was the most evil thing he'd ever seen her do. He'd been planning to get that last crumb. Drudgery chests are like little factories you can teach to do repetitive jobs for you. Like if I had one. There is no way I can get you one, said the right girl. And I wanted to chop 1,000 onions, which is a horrible job that makes a person cry, even if you cry for days. I can't get you one. Natalie's smile was so sunny Alden was surprised the onions didn't chop themselves for her. I would only have to chop 3 onions inside the drudgery chest, more like 20. And then all I'd have to do is keep giving it piles of onions and it would be an onion chopping professional. They are really not for cooking, the right said, keeping her eyes on Alden like she was afraid to look too hard at Natalie. Of course they could be. But there's only one I know of being used that way, and adding onto it has been my mother's hobby since she was my age. She'll probably sell it to the Artonans eventually. They are highly sought after. Not because they are the best at every automated task, but because you can re-instruct them to do whatever you need at the moment. You mean have the same device chopping onions in the morning and then frosting cupcakes in the afternoon? Asked Alden. See. He thinks it's a kitchen tool, too. You'll have to take it up with the Artonans if you want a drudgery chest, Natalie. There's low supply for one of the components. I'm on a waiting list just so I can put one together for my own personal use. They provide me with everything I need to fulfill orders for them, but otherwise. I'm not making any personal projects right now either, said her friend. Not because I can't get supplies, but because I'm getting sick of making cases. The last thing I want to do in my free time is make another one. When Alden left them, they were arguing about the right who'd made the bomb that the sailboat had been smuggling off the island and whether or not he had known where it was going when he created it. He stood across the kitchen island from Natalie, watching her garnish the turkey. It was resting on a glazed platter that was such a biteable candy apple shade, he was sure Hadaisa had hit it with her skill. Thank you so much again for doing this. If everything else is ruined, at least we'll still have the traditional dish. She didn't answer, and he realized her eyes weren't closed in momentary thought. She was actively using her power on the citrus wedges she was nestling around the bird. He watched her lips move as she mouthed a word. Laughter, he decided. She'd said before that cook of the moment required her to focus on her own memories. Her own moments. As the skill developed, she'd get more control over the flavors and the feelings her food evoked. Maybe laughter always tasted a little like cake batter in Natalie's head, and she would be able to inject a hint of that into a lemon if she wanted. I would absolutely eat a cake and laughter-flavored lemon. She was taking a while with each piece of fruit. He reached into one of his back pockets and pulled out his piece of origami paper from earlier. It was currently a diamond with a couple of protruding triangles. He had stopped folding here, since this was the last part of the design that wasn't easily ruined. While Natalie focused on a kumquat, he pulled up the instructional video he'd been watching in brief bursts this afternoon and finished his inadequate contribution to her holiday. Okay, she said a couple of minutes later, opening her eyes. It's done? The turkey looked glorious, but it had looked glorious even before she'd started on the garnish. It's done. She stared down at it. What if they don't like it? I'll snatch it away from them and bring it back here to appease the beasts you live with. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with scent. Elijah's right. Taking it away from them after they smelled it cooking all day is a crime. The Artonans are going to love it, he assured her. And here. I made a replacement for you. He set the origami turkey on the countertop beside its more edible relative. It was a perky-looking little thing with an upturned beak. And just as Alden felt a flash of pleasure at how neat the paper animal looked, it slowly tipped over onto its back. Oops! Before he could reach over to set it upright, Natalie grabbed it. Oh my God! He's precious. I love him. She held the turkey in her palm, and it tipped over again. Alden scratched his head. Sorry. He must be heavy in the rear. I'll make you a better. Natalie glared at him and cradled the turkey to her chest. No. Take it back. He's perfect. He's got a tail so big he can't stand up straight. He grew those giant feathers to impress the other turkeys. He's doing his best. She righted the turkey again on its tiny paper feet and watched it fall over once more. They both looked at it for a second and then burst out laughing. I'm going to name him, Natalie said breathlessly when she'd recovered enough to speak. I'm going to name him something. You should name him Big Butt. He wants a noble name. King Big Butt. She threw a kitchen towel at him, and he caught it. Hey, she said, you know how Verna was just saying there was only one place using a drudgery chest for cooking? It's a large one her mom made. Like a whole drudgery room. It's usually set up to make a meal of the day all by itself, and you can watch through a window. Do you want to come see it with me sometime? Yeah, of course. New magic stuff is always cool. Great. I'll find out when it's open again and let you know. She smiled at the turkey and made it a nest in another towel. There you go. He's looking comfortable now. Just needed a prop for his massive butt, Alden said. His name is Wobble. Wobble? Wobble Gobble. Alden nodded. A truly noble name. Line of asterisks. The flight of the Turkey Express was a remarkable experience. Alden would have preferred an unremarkable one, but he tried to act like he wasn't freaked out by any of the things that happened after he left Boomtown. Like former instructor Rao meeting him in the common area on his final stop by the dorms so that she could deliver a clove-studded ham. All her avowed profile information was written on the aluminum foil that covered it, so that Alden could memorize it and then casually mention it in conversation to the Artonans he met. Or like Principal Sleyca falling through the ceiling to land between the two of them and inform Rao that former faculty members shouldn't be lurking inside Garden Hall to bother students and insist they take their pork resumes to Matadero. I'm sorry about all of this, Alden said when Rao was gone. He shifted his grip on the large shopping bag that Hadaisa had given him for easier turkey howling. I thought I was asking a few friends for help, but everything got crazier than I planned. I'm here to add to it, said the principal, passing him an accordion folder. But at least it's not food. Let's try and keep the next few holidays on the calendar simpler. I will. By the way, about 20 students are outside trying to attach a plant creation to HNTI on Eshurdi's flying device. I know. They've only got 2 minutes left, then I'm leaving no matter what stage of the operation they're at. Don't drop it on anyone. Alden was just glad the cornucopia of earthly vegetation was slightly smaller than a golf cart. It was kind of amazing for a blinged-out salad horn, but he'd been afraid it was going to be bigger than the Grant Park Christmas tree by the time Jupiter and all the others who'd gotten involved were finished. Just before he boarded the Nonagon, an older girl he didn't know grabbed him by the shoulders and said, "Say Bloom," in an accent he couldn't place. Bloom? No. In Artonan. He opened his mouth. Not now. When you get there. Which Bloom? He knew 3 words for it. He guessed he'd go through them all. Standing in the garden, he smiled for a hasty photo with everyone in the vicinity who'd contributed. He saw Colibri, the uni instructor from his interview committee, coming down the pathway toward the group. But then Principal Sleyca was talking to her. And the picture was taken, and he was up in the air. He waved goodbye to Hoyu. He waved hello awkwardly to the drones filming him. He flew at low altitude through apex so that the cornucopia wouldn't kill anyone if the tarp and tape they'd used to pin it down failed. And he waved some more any time he spotted someone on the street or in a window waving at him. This is surreal. I want a nap. He carried the turkey in his lap and almost cheered when he left the coast behind, shoved his driving hand forward, and zipped toward Matadero. The approaching sunset tinted the sky. System, call Kabir. He said, lifting his voice over the wind. Kabir, I coming. I got the turkey. I see you coming. Kabir shouted back. He had a frenzied look on his face and a butcher knife in his hand. He was using it to hack his way into one of the coolers Hoyu's dad had wrapped. "I've been checking our hashtag to monitor your progress. I hate the fact that we have a hashtag and people can do that. But I'll be there soon. It's almost time," said Kabir. "I know. We can do it. If not, at least it will be over." He could tell they understood each other perfectly. Line of asterisks. "Blossom," said Alden and Ertonen. "Flower. Bloom." Hundreds of tiny purple buds spread their petals. Kabir's hand slapped against his in a high five before they both rushed for the elevator again. One cornucopia left in the lobby of the residential area, covered in rainbow vegetable carvings and garlands, and sparkling thanks to someone's spell impression. It was stuffed to bursting with earth fruits they'd taken from the crates the Ertonens already had lying around. "I'll light the candles," said Alden as they reached the cafeteria again. His turkey bag was still preserved. "I'll put out the cards," Kabir replied. The right work candles someone had sent earlier were spaced around the edge of the room at regular intervals. Kabir had been working hard while he was gone. Autumn evening picnic set. Alden crouched to hold his hands over the wick on top of the first chunky black candle. "Let's see what you look like. And let's not flub the casting," he thought wryly. "Kabir's not paying much attention, and I can always blame the candle itself, but still." His fingers moved. He pretended he was lighting a promise stick. The command his authority gave for this was so familiar, and it seemed to grow easier every time. He wondered if it was him, getting stronger and more used to making this particular demand. Or if it was everything else, growing accustomed to listening to him and answering him. A flicker. One enchanted candle dimming the corner it sat in instead of brightening it, casting the shadows of trees against the ceiling and walls. Alden watched a ghostly leaf fall from a branch. "Good candles," he said. "Keep going," Kabir called. He had the accordion file Principal Sley had given Alden, and he was spreading the cards it contained around the cafeteria tables. They were from the preschool children who attended Chelena North's daycare while their parents worked or attended classes. The handprint turkeys and undecipherable drawings joined the few, more legible notes sent by adults. Alden went to light the other candles. The work didn't really end. They just ran out of time. A couple of minutes before 9 o'clock, Kabir spied the first large group of wizards teleporting in thanks to a viewing spell he'd set up downstairs. "They're here," he bellowed. He'd gotten louder and louder as they approached the finish line. Alden didn't know if the chef was trying to pump them both up, or if it was a side effect of the champagne that Aliavilra had somehow managed to have delivered by helicopter while he was away. Standing in the kitchen, Alden looked down at the floor. There were still a few mystery boxes that had come through the TC to open, still a few final touches to make things perfect. Kabir ran by with yet another chafing dish. The wizards could easily heat their own plates of food with a spell, but they were trying for proper temperatures anyway. "We're done?" He studied all of the containers. None of them seemed to be from individuals. Lots of packaging from businesses. "Yeah, we're done. This can all go into the freezer later. Showtime." "Porty loath," he texted. "Second meal is ready. It's special. HN Tyon Eshurti. HN Tyon Lindauta. Drusiauta. Zaridi, we're having a Thanksgiving supper. You should come get a plate, and we'll save it for when you're allowed to eat earth food again." He freed the turkey from its bag carefully. Re-preserved it. Then he went to stand behind the long buffet Kabir had made by shoving tables together. Dead center, facing the elevator. For the first time, he had the chance to see it all arrayed in front of him. The tables had white cloths. The candles were doing a lot of heavy lifting on the atmosphere front. It looked really overambitious all of a sudden. Wrong. Like if he were throwing an amazing party for the species that was obsessed with parties, he should have gone bigger. And since he wasn't doing that, he should have gone smaller, with his original vision. Just the food and the gratitude. What if they think it's lame? What if they're tired and annoyed by it all? His mouth dried up. Then his eyes landed on the creamed spinach from Mrs. Long. He had already set aside the letter she had written to the two knights, so that it wouldn't get lost. And there were the stuffed peppers from Hoyu's mom. Bobby's salad. A mound of cheese muffins from someone who was living in one of the temporary housing domes on campus. A ton of food had been relegated to the fridges and freezers. They'd put out the dishes from the people they knew and the ones that fit in with the potluck spirit. Everyone meant well and donated. They're all going to ask me how it went. What if it goes wrong? One new terror crossing his mind at the worst possible moment. Am I supposed to say something to everyone before the meal? Kabir had just dashed by with a piping bag full of whipped cream. What? Like a speech? I don't have to give a speech, do I? Kabir stared at him. Well, I'm not giving a speech. Does there have to be a speech? I can't just drop the turkey and run away. Can I? Of course not. But what do I say? Me standing here in the center holding the turkey makes me look responsible for all of this. Like I'm in charge. You're responsible for all of this. Don't look at me like I just hurt you by saying that. It's the truth. The elevator arrived. The door that led to one of the cube's staircases opened at the same time. As the first bunch of chattering wizards walked in, Alden froze like he'd been hit with a spell. They were looking around with curious expressions. This is the Thanksgiving? He heard one of them say. Shadow trees. Hello, Kabir. The Thanksgiving. Someone else chirped. I was told the goal of the event is to eat one of everything. Look. Drawings made by human children. The preschool artwork was apparently worthy of everyone's attention. They were still exclaiming over it when the doors opened again. Alden felt his tension ratchet up to new heights as more wizards poured through. And then he spotted Lindora, Escherty, and Portyloth. And he suddenly relaxed. Lindora was watching her partner fondly while he bickered with Portyloth about healing groves. Escherty was wearing the same outfit he'd had on when he and Alden had had their talk after his rescue. Bo's back. I'm out of my squish boot. I got to visit with Stuart. I learned 100 things while I was with him at the rapport, and I'm going to see him again soon. And visit a mind healer. I'm weaving a friendship. I have a magic earring now. And? Choices to make. So much life lived in just a few days. So much life he'd almost missed out on. Escherty spotted him and started toward him with a smile. Lindora was with him. Hello, Alden, she said. I'm glad to finally greet you. Her brown hair hung below her waist in triple braids, and her wide-set eyes were a pale caramel color. Is this the Thanksgiving? Escherty asked. He was studying the platter in Alden's hands. It is, said Alden, looking between the two of them. No need for some dramatic speech. That's not the right thing. This is from my friend Natalie. A lot of people wanted to share what they could even though I didn't give them much time to prepare. They wanted to say thank you. So did I. He let his skill end so that hers could take over. Want turkey? A smell that called to mind warmth, laughter, family, and friends was unleashed into the room. Lindora smiled. Escherty clasped his hands together in front of his chest, looking delighted. Alden watched as heads rose from their perusal of cards and their studies of candles and turned toward the feast table. Thank you. He said it loudly enough for his voice to be heard by everyone who had arrived in the cafeteria so far, but his eyes paused on Portyloth and then stayed on the knights. Thank you so much for coming when we needed you. We all hope you enjoy the meal. Tobe continued.